Father go blind. I love that, do you?
Nice, aren't they, those? Yeah, but I'm reading today's paper. My week finishes reading today's paper. Isn't it getting bomb? This is The Guardian, it's not The Sun. Now, Nancy Banksmith does a review of like, Lace 2 or whatever it was, which I hadn't seen, that was on this last couple of days. But she points out that the hero, actually, it's one of the first times she says, has made an escape on an elephant. Which I never saw it, but you've seen it. It's all right. On an elephant. But she says Lace 2 is rather like an elephant itself. The front's on Sunday, the back end's on Monday, and it's possible to walk around it for hours without making head or tail of it. You know, and to kick it's a waste of labour. You know, it makes a little joke. But they've edited, the sub-editor, whoever it is at The Guardian, Rambo on a jumbo. Rambo's nothing to do with it, but, you know, somebody makes an escape with a gun on an elephant. Rambo. And you feel, is it me? You know, I saw something in the paper the other day, a new word, ramboid. You know, oh, this is a pretty ramboid chap. You know, you just think, ramboid? What? This took the cake for me. Here, look, The Sun, I'll translate it for you. They have to, for their own readers, because, of course, they can't read big words anyway, but he has to translate it for them. And apparently, Sylvester Stallone's mother is not enamoured of his choice of a bride-to-be.
Oh, right.
He's going to marry this girl. She's agreed to be his lady wife, and Sylvester Stallone's mother is not too clean.
Lady wife.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Here is the headline. Angry Mumbo wraps Rambo's rumpo. Now, how would you like that said about you, Janice? But you say I get a Daily Mail. Was this yesterday? And I'm just having a look, you know, a gang of 50 Rambo fans fought police and ran. These people, the film hadn't even started.
No.
Some fellas broke into a cinema, so after the pubs had shut, it was a midnight showing, and the police had to throw them out. Wow, Rambo, and then it says, we're dealing with a lot of Rambos, said one police officer. And you think, let's find that man. Where is he? I bet he never said anything of the sort. I thought, there's nothing for it. I went. That's the high point of my week. I went to see Rambo. It opened at the week.
For it.
Well, I went Sunday afternoon while people were having a bit of a kip after the pub and so on. And I got in my local, you see. No riots. They just sat and watched it. Nobody clapped. You know, I wasn't surprised at all. See, I liked the first one. Did you ever see that one, First Blood?
No.
The very first Rambo thing? Hardly anybody seems to have seen it. It was all people. Simon Bates, I think, lent Chris Lysett a video that somebody had passed on to him to review. His video packed up. He lent it to me. I sat with the missus and we thought, oh, actually, this is quite exciting. Because it was one of those things where... vengeance things, where he beats the bullies.
Yeah.
You know, he drifts back from Vietnam and he's come back to bring belongings to his old buddy's family who was dead in Vietnam. Something like that. The police try and turn him out of town. And they get him into the police station, and it's all that sort of, hey, boy, we're going to teach you some respect. He's got their head in a teapot, you know what I mean? They've got to spend the rest of their life looking down the spout. You know, and you thought, hey, we'd all like to be that. I used to like those kung fu. You know, the one, grasshopper. You know, those things where, you know, they get him in a bar. Hey, here's the chink over there, the gook, let's go and rough him up. You think, oh, boy. Because you'd love to have those skills where you could just give somebody a firm handshake, you know, his legs drop off, woof, you know, no. And that first one was sort of like that, dealing with the bullies. This one's different. Rambo's got a lot bigger. I don't know how he's done it, whether it's steroids or pumping up iron, whatever they do, but it seems huge. I don't know whether you noticed this. This won't be, obviously, somebody that the average listener will count on to, but he looks like a huge, muscular, big man with Tony Wilson's face pushed in the middle. Tony Wilson, who does Tommy Vance, the heavy metal show. He's like Tony's got a puny body, but a Rambo face with a little bent nose. And it's just as if they push, it's quite exciting. But, I mean... they get him out of prison, and it's the old Vietnam vet, and they're going to send him back to see if there are any prisoners of war still in. That's the basic story. It's been in all the papers, you know, so they have to send him back. It's a one-man task force kind of thing, you know. And he gets to say, sort of like, they say, will you do it? And he says, do we get to win this time? And you think, when you've seen the film, you think, not this time, you know, one thing and another. Because he's got to find out whether they're, you know, prisoners of war back in Vietnam. You know, the sort of thing, I mean, he's fighting gooks and commies. Aren't we all, Janice? Aren't we all here in the West? He finishes up fighting his own bosses, of course, because they're all pretty corrupt. Aren't we all, Janice? Aren't we all? Definitely. But it's just really, once you've said that, it's a comic strip. You know, I mean, he could have ridden out on an elephant like the bloke in The Guardian this morning in lace, because the commies and gooks couldn't hit an elephant. You know, there's hundreds of them with guns. Wherever he is, they can't hit him. He just goes... you know, they all go blowing up sky high. And it's just pure... I don't know, you know, but, I mean, you see, the commies can't shoot. And then the capitalist can't stop eating. Apart from him, you never see him eat or drink anything. He goes right through days of blowing up commies and gooks and so on, and not that excitingly, really. But the rest of them are, here's a mission. We'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to fly into Thailand. Okay? Where are you going to fly me? Thailand. You know, and it's all Big Macs and, you know, Coke. You know, you can see what the difference is, like, straight away, you know. But frankly, as fantasy, it's not as good as James Bond, frankly. I mean, if people like that sort of thing. I like gratuitous violence. I'm not knocking it on that level. I mean, we know it's acted.
Sex.
Well, let's get the show out of the way first, Janice. I'll be waiting at the stage door. But on the other hand, the only bit I thought, oh, that was good, is when there's some Russian actually looking for him in the jungle, you know, and they go, and it's all raining, you know, and it's sort of like Malay and all raining. And he steps back, and there's this great muddy bank, and then it focuses past the man's head. And in the mud, you see, the bank's got an eye. It just opens and closes. And he's covered himself in mud and got into this bank, and then he goes, you know, and gets his hand round him. You think, what? That's jolly good. But once you've seen that, you know, I mean, it's harmless enough. But the trouble is, it'll encourage a lot of kids to leave the cinema and go to, like, you know, the flipping Bromley, Star of Bromley Chinese restaurant or whatever it is, and they'll burst in, die, gooks! They'll get their ears ripped off. You know, I mean, I think it'll encourage a lot of kids to be twerps. But the main part of it is, in some ways, it's a sad view of the way that America sees itself today, in many ways, because it's this new manliness, you know, born in the USA, you know, Bruce and all that sort of thing. Reagan, I gather, is now putting it around that he had a bit of a war record, you know, I was there, you know, and apparently he just spent the war in Hollywood, you know, he never went anywhere. Springsteen never got in, he got bad feet. Should have heard him sing. God, they only had a look at his feet and didn't let him go to Vietnam, you know. Sylvester Stallone himself, for all this, don't we get a win this time? Blow up the gooks. He got out of it. He was teaching in Switzerland until it was all over and then came home, you know, and you thought, well, I don't blame him for that, but, you know. And I think City Limits did a very good article on it and summed it up. They did a lot of the background and then said, let's face it, you know, Americans have got to realise there are no prisoners of war. You lost the war, you know, and you've got to face that. There's no good pretending, gosh, we were cheated in some way. It's not true, you know, it just is Tarzan, that's all it is, you know. And when you get in there, his girlfriend, of course, turns out to be, he immediately falls practically on top of his girlfriend from the plane. Whoa! She didn't kill her. But, I mean, she looks about as Asiatic as, like, well, Jenny Agutter. Do you know, and that she's got almondy eyes like Jenny Agutter, but that's about as far as it goes. And she talks like Doris Day, the way she talks, except they miss words out to show she's a gook, really, but a friendly gook, you know what I mean? And at one stage, they're going... I mean, on a boat, that's the boat, not that. I mean, for all we know, they're doing that, yeah, but on the other hand, you don't see that bit, because it's not just 15 rating or whatever, they're going down the river when he's off on the mission, and she's with him, and they're standing with tank blower-uppers and all these things. And she says something about him, so sprawl, and he just says, I'm expendable. She has to say, what mean expendable? Well, I'm afraid, if you like it, you like it. But as far as the old film Rambo is expandable. So that's the end of that. That's enough of Rambo. Before we get to some music, you see, heroes. This is a new topic. Friday, I was after round table down in the pub with Skinner and Midgeur and Eddie from China Crossing, so we were all belly aching about a round table coming off, the usual thing. Well, if only Rambo was here to burst in. So stop that Rambo thing. So anyway, let's get away from that. I looked down on the table there. There's a copy of The Sun. Headline about a test match. We're beating the Aussies. Headline, Rambo them. Oh, no, I thought, no, get out, I'm sick of this Rambo stuff. So where are these heroes, real heroes, you know? Round we go around the Indian restaurant, not we, but me and some people went round the Indian restaurant round the corner. Sat there, having a thing, bloke sits next to me, bloke I know, an actor like, I mean, I've known some years, you know, and he sort of tapped, hello, mate. So I said, hello, David, how's it going on? And he says, oh, by the way, he said, do you know, John Waters, BBC, Ian Botham. And he sat at the next table. I mean, real heroes. It was a strange day. I mean, he's not a hero of mine personally. I mean, it's all right, you know, but I'm not a cricketing hero man, you know. I mean, obviously I like seeing Whackham, but, you know. Then the thing was, at lunchtime on the very same day, I thought, what a weird day. We'd been in the BBC playing the jazz, right, you know, and because it's holiday time, some people are on holiday. And Johnny Barnes from the Humphrey Littleton Band said, that's all right, I'll come Friday, play clarinet, because obviously he's a very good player, one of the best in Europe, you know. And so we thought, oh, smashing, old Johnny will come and play with us. So he turns up a bit late, we're all already playing sort of thing. And, oh, baby. He walks in, and he got this black gentleman with him who looks a bit frail and walked in. Sat him down. I thought, oh no. Buck Clayton. You're going to say who's Buck Clayton? Imagine you've been done a bit of tap dancing as a kid. Imagine if you said, I'm in the BBC tap dancing lunchtime. Walked down. Who's out in the corner? Oh, he doesn't do it now. Fred Astaire. Oh, no. But anyway, Buck Clayton. So it's a day of meeting heroes. But because he used to be, as you probably do know, really, but I mean, he'd Count Basie band, a lot of records of his own, crucial trumpet player, and I'm sat there. I mean, he very kindly, courteously, like, clapped, I mean, he got to, really. He was stuck in there. He couldn't get out. But I think we'll just stop now and play a little of his music, because, of course, he played on all those classic Billie Holiday records that everybody says, oh, they always say, Sade, Billie Holiday, come on. Billie Holiday was the real thing. This is the very thought of you. Lester Young's playing clarinet and tenor on it, and Buck Clayton, who clapped me on Friday, is playing trumpet here nearly 50 years ago, 38, I think. The real Billie Holiday there with Buck Clayton. I'm so glad that he's still alive. Anyway, well, there he was. Art!
Oh.
I mentioned about Bruce McLean's week of performance art at the Tate there. I mean, twice every lunchtime this week if you're around, and he is sort of, crucial, trendy artist. He's in the face this week, and there's this sort of award-winning John Moore's winner, that sort of, but it's strange. I thought, I'll have a look. Went in. He's got, like, in the middle of the, marble halls of the Tate, this wooden structure, which is something like cross between a temple from an amateur performance of Aida, just great lumps of wood with doorways in it, like, and a wimpy show house. It's about 12 feet tall, and it's made of wood, and it's painted roughly blue, and there's, steps in it, and, you think, hello, what is it, Well, people stood around. I started to crowd round, because it said 1:30 performance. You see, this is a Tate gallery, and tourists and people all stood around. And the attendants started to come out. He goes up, take a chair. And they're giving out this fold-over little metal things, little seats, they use for lectures, and everybody was sitting down. Next minute they came round. He doesn't want you to sit down. Everybody stand up again. Everybody take all the chairs in. I thought, is this it? Are they trying to tell us something? The next minute, because he's got blue ladders, he's obviously made himself all leaning up against this great big object, this house kind of thing. The attendants started to come down. Oh, excuse me. Take down the ladders and lie on the floor. Is this it? Are they saying the working man works and yet removes the means of his own going up in the world? Is this what... Then he thought, no, it's just an attendant take it. He started to try and look for meanings, I don't know quite what he meant by it, and I'm sure Bruce doesn't know entirely, but two chaps assisted him. One had a suit and a hat, and he tended to walk. When it started, he walked in and out of this object building, like Wendy house thing, and looked at it and kind of... but made official gestures, kind of, as if he was the owner or agent for it, and strutted about. And he'd keep peering round the corner. Then another chap appeared with a sort of shirt sleeves and a tie, appeared to be measuring it. He kept running up the steps, looking over the top. So there's all this action going off in the street, people looking at him. Then Bruce arrives. He's clearly the worker. Rolled of lino or something. Slams, goes in. You can hear him slamming about. He brings in objects and... You thought, he comes rushing in through the Tate with a tea trolley. Wants to into up the ramp inside, crashes about, comes out with hammers and gosh. Eventually, he comes out with boxing gloves and starts to punch this large object.
Rambo.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why you start to wonder. And you say, we people who are in the arts, Janice, we start to think, is it a metaphor for being? That's what I always say, because you think... could cover anything there.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, I don't know. You see, some people looked at it and smiled and laughed and took photographs, and some just walked away and thought we were going to look at the pictures, because it goes on about half an hour. But I thought, in a sense, it was perhaps a metaphor. I'm sure Bruce would have a laugh, but I had no idea. But it's probably a metaphor for those sort of, that kind of self-important fusspot existence. It was like a show house.
Yeah.
The sort of property.
Yes.
There are people striding about. I own this property. I am working on this property. But then they were sort of peering over as if, the way people waste time with a lot of much ado about nothing, striding about and looking out windows and posing and measuring. And it was measuring, man. That's the way I saw it. But I suppose we all read our own way into it, anything. But I'm saying it's on this week twice at lunchtimes if you're passing and in the art business. But, I mean, if you're thinking of a choice between Bruce and Rambo, you're the sort of person who'll probably write Rambo more and then come round and hit me afterwards. Last week we were talking about all these stories in the paper about BBC vetting.
Oh, yes.
And people having to be interviewed and saying... And I was saying, I approve of it for certain types of people. I've got two more types of people.
Oh, right.
One is the kind of person who uses catchphrases off the telly. Do you know what I mean? I was once at the canteen about a year or so ago, and there's a bloke standing in the queue, all his mates, and he just kept turning to his mates and he said, well, Dave, said, I'm all right, you all right?
Oh.
When Steve was doing that. And they just nod and he'd go, you all right, Reg? I'm all right, you all right? Then when that didn't get anything, he just looked along the queue and said, Here's a job. And I thought,
Oh,
blimey,
no.
what a burk. So I won't keep him in. And then I won't have people, I'll have people vetted out of the BBC, if possible, who use phony foreign phrases. You know, like, I was in the queue, bloke's queuing up, and he says, 2 packets of biscuits. No, he said, 2 coffees, Edie, if you can. And she gets the coffees. He says, and I'll have a packet of biscuits, please. Non-chocolato.
Oh, no.
Yes,
Oh.
and I thought, well, anyway, muchos gracias for staying right to the end, Janice. We're changing the song. Finally, about the press again. If it's not Rambo, it's some foolery. But this was a BBC thing. I heard it on the news after that Sotheby's thing. Like, put my hand on the red light and boot my finger to show we're on the air. Oh, he shows it's light. Shows it's live. Anyway, so after we talked about that Sotheby's rock sale,
Yeah.
and the BBC said something like, rock fans invaded Sotheby's this afternoon. And I thought, wait a minute. Then they go into the news stories that they've just sold to some eastern potentate like the popodom of rumpy pumpy. Something who's paid something like £1 million for a piece of John Lennon's toilet paper hardly used kind of thing. And you thought, rock fans invade Sotheby's. Do you know, but I was still cursing because the next day, one of those Apple Watches that I pointed out I should have had, I was here when I was away the day they came round. They all went for about £220. And I thought, well, wait, I will bring in something collectible just to show that I have a little something.
Yes.
And here is, I played you last week, my Mark Bolan
Yeah.
record, which is signed to me by Mark Bolan.
Yeah.
That's going to be worth something. Now, these are almost unique. Let me tell you the story. Dr. Hook brought out a record in America called The Cover of Rolling Stone. Like,
Yeah.
I've made it in the rock
Yeah.
business when I'm on the cover of Rolling Stone. BBC said, we can't play this. It's advertising Rolling Stone. It's a magazine. We can't play that. CBS went back and they printed a few to try and get us to play them. And all their pluggers got in the studio and they dubbed themselves over, trying to get her on the right side of the BBC singing, get it played on the cover of Radio Times. We still didn't play it. It was a mad idea, but this must be one of the few remaining copies. Nobody's ever made me an offer for it. I don't think anybody knows it is. This is one of the rare times you'll hear the cover of a radio joint.
I don't believe it. Don't touch me. Hey, Ray. Hey, Sugar. Tell them who we are.
John Walters will be back on, what day is it now? Tuesday, on Thursday, with the Music Press, his review of the Music Press. Here's the Blasters again.